Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Vicki Parsons from Ballet Austin, and we're here to have an interview with Be Well's Ask the Expert. And today I have with me Adrien Paczosa, who is from Nourish. She is a licensed and registered dietitian, and I'm so glad to have you with us. I've met her a couple of times. She's awesome and amazing, and so if you ever need a dietitian, a nutritionist, she's my recommendation. So
Oh,
welcome.
thank you so much, Vicki. It is an absolute honor to get to talk with you and just the wonderful ballet community.
Well, thank you. So May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have three different pages that we highlight eating well, moving well, and just living well in general. And so today we're going to talk about how nutrition, how food impacts our mental health. We know, when I was growing up, I remember people telling me, if you eat that, you'll be fat. If you don't eat that, you won't feel good. If you don't eat this food, you won't be able to run fast in that race. But I don't remember people talking to me much about how what I ate would affect my mental health. Is that a new thing?
It's not a new thing. It's one of those things that it kind of has evolved of like, oh yeah, we forgot that food affects our brain and that all of our emotions, so our happiness, our sadness, all of the kind of biochemical things that make up those emotions actually derive or come from food.
Okay, well, that makes sense to me. So, getting to a little bit of the practical, so certain diets. Let's talk about maybe the standard American diet, which I don't even know if there is a standard American diet anymore. But I'm talking about the diet that's loaded in excess sugar and fat, and I think we're getting a little better, but I still think it's out there. Processed foods and some of those sort of typical foods that we think of when we think of the American diet. Well, I know it's bad for my physical health, but can you address what we eat here in this country and how it might affect our mental health? And you can certainly talk
Yeah.
about the physical as well.
Yeah, so I think that it's when we think about the average American diet, it's not balanced. And so when we want to kind of nourish our body, nourish our brain, we want to come from a balanced place. We need all the puzzle pieces. We need some carbohydrates, we need some protein, we need some fat. We've got to have lots of color. And what you described of a diet full of processed foods, high in saturated fats and sugars, we're missing a lot of color. We're missing some of those good, healthy, essential fatty acids. So, those are the ways that we can kind of really add to our mental health. And so, if we think about the average American diet, it just isn't balanced.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I remember. You talked a lot about balance when I heard you speaking before, and I think what you were saying at that time is that we don't have to absolutely never have that piece of cheesecake.
Yeah.
But the word balance came out a lot. So maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But if I want to think about my mood, if I'm feeling low or really experiencing any other mental health issues, are there foods that you would say I should typically stay away from?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So certain foods can either speed up your brain. So if we're feeling kind of low in that in depressive mode, our brain activity is low. So we actually want to speed it up. If we're kind of in an anxiety place, we're feeling really anxious, we want to slow it down. So it's these different levers in food that we can pull. And so if I'm in a more of a lower place, I want to speed up the brain. And so I might add in more carbohydrates like whole grains, beans, legumes, complex carbohydrates. Those are things that actually help to pull us out of that low phase. If I'm in an anxiety place, I'd want to slow down the brain and add in some really great essential fatty acids, like an avocado and some walnuts, whole cheese, whole fat cheeses, and milk. So those would actually kind of slow us down.
That's going to make a lot of people happy. No, avocado is definitely a favorite. And I remember at some point hearing it, don't eat avocado, but actually I've heard so many things recently about it also being good for our heart. And so what about dark chocolate?
Ah, dark chocolate. So, we'll hear some of these foods that they're like superfoods or power foods. And so what you'll hear in research is what they're talking about is a subcategory. So you've got vitamins and minerals we hear about it like, oh, vitamin C, vitamin D, all of that. There's a subcategory called flavonoids, which is a big fancy word for antioxidants. And so in dark chocolate, there's these special flavonoids that actually, the cacao that we hear from like the cacao plant, and that actually kind of are protective. And so I always kind of think about it as when we have dark chocolate, it kind of causes our brain like a little hug, like it's okay, all that anxiety, all that stress, it's okay. We see that in resveratrol, which is in red wine, or in grapes. So anything that has lots and lots of color will have all of these extra flavonoids that kind of go in and just give your brain a little hug.
I really like that analogy. I think that I'm going to remember that. I just probably need to remember having a little bit of balance in how many hugs of chocolate I need every day. But I do like that analogy. I think that there's just something about that feel good when it goes down. So when you're having those stressful days and anxious days, why do I reach for the bag of chips and eat the whole thing? Or what? Is
Yeah.
that something you can speak to?
Oh, definitely. So it's comfort. It's comfort eating. And there's no good, bad, right, wrong about it. It's just one of those learned behaviors, and it's okay. And so I think that's one of the things is like, it is normal. It is okay. And I think it's when we kind of always lean on that as a coping skill that might be like, maybe I need to find something else. And so what I always like to ask patients is, what are you hungry for? And so if there isn't any food around, or if that's not an option, am I hungry for a hug? Am I hungry? I need to talk to somebody. Am I so angry? I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to have some Oreos or whatever it might be. So I think it's just being able to pause and like, what am I really hungry for? And I might be like, I'm really hungry because I'm pissed and I don't want to deal with things. And that's okay. So I think it's a normal thing. It's when I would say to be more mindful of it if it's our always go-to for self-care.
Okay. Is there something that you would suggest, just a quickie here, if to stop me from reaching for that bag of chips or for that whole box of cookies? Is there anything I can
Yeah,
do in the moment, or is it really
yeah.
just practicing mindfulness?
It sounds a lot easier, like, oh, just practical mindfulness. So one of because when we're in the day to day, it's so hard. And so if you can actually get your body to relax, and so as dancers, your body is your instrument, and you know how to really get into your body. I think it's harder for those that aren't dancers or in the dance community to get into their body. We're always very stuck in our head. So actually, if you're able to relax and feel your lower back on your chair, feel the back of your legs on your chair, and feel your feet on the floor. What that does internally is it slows down your nervous system, and it engages one of your major kind of neural pathways that's connected to your tummy. It's called your vagal nerve. It's my favorite nerve in the body. And it causes you to actually connect with your tummy and internally notice if you are physically hungry. We might be emotionally hungry, which is a-okay, but am I physically hungry? And if you can say, yeah, I'm not physically hungry, I'm emotionally hungry, cool beans, but at least you'll be able to get in touch with your body. And so what I always tell people is this idea of mindfulness is just do a body scan. Dancers, you guys are magicians at body scans. You know what works, what isn't working. If your toes are in lots of pain after a point class, you know all of that. So just do a quick body check before we maybe go for the second or eighth piece of chocolate.
Okay. So going to the grocery store, if you're stressed or anxious, I'm assuming that probably going to the grocery store in that state is probably not recommended when it comes to food.
Yeah. Pretty much anything isn't the best recommendation when you're stressed and anxious
Yeah.
or feeling depressed. And so unless you love it. Like, I love going to the grocery store. It's one of my happy places. And so it actually picks me up. But if it isn't a happy place, don't do it. Like, if you're needing food, there's wonderful food delivery places nowadays. So I think giving yourself that permission and grace, like, don't go if you don't feel like it.
Well, thank you. I think I love going to the grocery store too. I look forward to it every week. It's a favorite activity of mine, and I'm not usually stressed or anxious at the grocery store. It is kind of where I can sort of ground myself a little bit. So I want to go back to that point I made a while ago. When I heard you speak before, you talked a lot about balance. So can you briefly talk about balance in regards to, why that's really important to our overall mental health and physical health as well, and why balance is helpful for us to remember?
Yeah. Oh, this is one of my favorite things. When we think about nutrition and balance, it's all the different puzzle pieces that make up food. And so if we have too much of one and not enough the other, our body just doesn't work. And so what would happen from like a mental health perspective, we wouldn't have all of the right puzzle pieces to make serotonin or happiness. We wouldn't have all the right puzzle pieces to digest anxiety. We wouldn't have all the right puzzle pieces to have cognitive reasoning, problem solving skills. And so that's from a mental health standpoint of why nutrition is kind of a basis for good mental health. Is it actually is all the building blocks to make you happy.
Okay. So May being National Mental Health Awareness Month, and also in May, we know that a lot of our high school and college students are in finals. So is there a superfood that can help me ace that test?
Besides a great night's sleep and tons of hydration, I would say those would be the top priorities, which is always a hard thing is sleep for our students. Hydration is another puzzle piece that we forget about. So we are just little bodies of water in a human suit. And so you actually need a lot more water, especially if you are dancing a lot and talking a lot. So that I would say kind of would be a top superfood is making sure you're adequately hydrated. And then second, all of those really rich, fatty, essential fatty acid foods, so like salmon, walnuts, the avocados, olives, olive oil. What that does is it causes our brain to kind of soak it up, but also really retain information. What was it? When I was back in college a few years ago, we were trying to come up with like the best study food, and it was pretty much like salmon salad with like egg yolks and avocados covered in olive oil with walnuts. Doesn't sound great for breakfast, but like a great lunch would be wonderful.
Great. Well, you sort of alluded to this, but I think also what you said was besides getting enough sleep, that you really can't just have good nutrition. You also have to balance that out with having enough movement in your body and sleeping well and not doing excessive other things that are harmful to your body. So nutrition, it sounds like, is not just a standalone, is it?
No, it's a part of the whole package. And it's also really personalized. So somebody that is a company member versus one of the ones in like the older adult classes that comes in, our nutrition needs are going to be very different. So I think it's also remembering and reminding ourselves that what I see other people eating may not always be the best thing for me because of activity level, stress level, stage of life. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to just sort of speak to something. We
Yeah.
don't have too much more time, but if before we go, is there anything that you would like to summarize or in relation to food and mental health that you would like to leave people with?
Yeah. Let me think. I would say that nutrition is that puzzle piece for good overall mental health, physical health. And when you're able to approach food in an open, non judgmental way, it truly breaks down the barrier to good, bad, right, wrong, and allows for enjoyment without shame. But then also, you're able to truly nourish your body and brain to help you feel your best.
Oh, I love that. So I know we're not going to speak to this today because I'm going to tell people if they are struggling with obesity or eating disorders or anything that is beyond just a little chat here,
Yeah.
that they really need to reach out to a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And we will include the link to Nourish, and Adrien is amazing. So if you're struggling with something, it is recommended that you go and see a professional. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, thank you so much for saying that and linking to Nourish. We truly want to help kind of make food not scary, make it not confusing. There's so much noise out there about food and what you should and shouldn't be doing. And so if you do have anything that you're struggling with, from a mental health issue, eating disorder, disordered eating, any medical condition, hypertension, diabetes, we're here to support. We want to truly bridge that gap and make a plan that works best for you.
Well, thank you. And Adrien, we're very fortunate that you're in the Austin Central Texas area. And so we will be providing that information on how to get a hold of her if you'd like to talk more. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And we love these Ask the Expert sessions. We will be having another expert from Nourish on to talk about mental health in a little bit different capacity. So we'll be meeting her as well. But thank you, Adrien, and we'll hope to talk again another time.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Bye.